Imagine you're given a block of stone and told to carve air. Not the suggestion of air, not the impression of emptiness, actual, visible, see-through gaps, dozens of them, threaded through the sculpture like the holes in a fishing net. Gaps so real that you could slide a finger through them, so thin that the stone surrounding them shouldn't be able to hold its own weight. Now imagine doing that with a chisel, by hand, one strike at a time, knowing that a single miscalculation, 1 degree off, 1 fraction too much pressure, doesn't just ruin the piece. It destroys years of your life in a single second. No safety net, no backup plan, no second block of marble waiting in the corner. That is exactly what Francesco Carollo attempted in 1752 in a small chapel in Naples, and somehow, impossibly stubbornly, against every law of physics and common sense, he succeeded. Before we get into how, let's talk about why this matters. Stone is a brutal material to work with. It doesn't bend, it doesn't forgive. Every sculptor who has ever touched marble will tell you the same thing. You're not building something, you're excavating it. You're removing what doesn't belong and hoping what's left is what you imagined. And once something is gone, it is gone. Every other art form has an undo button. Painters paint over, writers rewrite. Even other sculptors working in clay or wax can press the material back into shape if something goes wrong. Marble gives you nothing. And within marble, there is one specific form that sits at the absolute edge of what the material can structurally survive: open lacework, interlocking threads. The kind of geometry where if you remove too much stone, the piece collapses. If you remove too little, it looks wrong. The margin between success and catastrophe is measured in millimeters. Nobody had attempted it at this scale before Carollo, and after seeing what the attempt required, it's easy to understand why. The sculpture is called disinganno, which translates roughly as release from deception or disillusion. It lives in the San Severo Chapel in Naples, a building that functions less like a place of worship and more like a museum dedicated to the outer limits of human craftsmanship. The veiled Christ is here. The anatomical machines are in the basement. And in one corner, commanding the room with quiet, devastating authority, stands Carollo's net. The central figure is a man, muscular, struggling, tangled from shoulders to knees in a fishing net that wraps around his entire body. A small, winged figure reaches toward him, helping work the ropes free, one hand pointing downward toward a globe sitting at their feet. On the globe rests an open Bible. Beneath all of it, carved into the pedestal, a bas-relief panel shows Christ restoring sight to a man born blind. From a distance, the net appears to be a separate object, maybe draped over the marble figure, maybe added as a prop. Your brain looks for that explanation because the alternative is too difficult to process. But there is no separate object, there is no added layer. The net, the figure, the angel, the globe, the Bible, all of it came from one block of stone. Every gap in that net, every crossing of thread over thread, every section where you can see straight through the lacework to the body underneath, carved by one man. Over approximately 7 years, if you count only the time he spent on the net itself. Here is what that process actually required. To carve a net from marble, you have to work inside the block. You're not shaping an exterior surface, you're reaching into the stone and hollowing out the space between the threads without touching the threads themselves. The deeper you go, the less you can see. The less you can see, the more you're working on intuition and feel. And the entire time, every strand of carved marble you've already completed is vibrating slightly with each chisel strike because stone transmits force. One bad hit anywhere in the sculpture sends a shockwave through every fragile thread. Carollo knew this. He had already broken a net sculpture once before on a different commission. He carried that failure into this one. What makes it even more remarkable, after the carving was finished, he still had to polish it. Marble doesn't look like marble straight off the chisel. It needs to be worked with progressively finer abrasives until the surface achieves that luminous, skin-like quality that makes the material feel almost alive. The professional stoneworkers of Naples refused to do it. According to the San Severo Chapel Museum, the craftsmen who normally handled the finishing process, men who had spent their careers polishing marble, took one look at Carollo's net and said no. They believed the light pressure of a pumice stone drawn across those carved threads would shatter the entire structure. These weren't timid men. These were professionals who worked with stone every day. And they looked at what Keraulo had carved and decided it was too fragile to touch. So Keraulo polished every thread himself, by hand, slowly. After 7 years of carving, he spent more time finishing the piece that no professional would go near. The historian Gian-Giuseppe Origlia, writing in 1754, while the sculpture was still being completed, called it the last and most extreme boundary that marble sculpture can reach. Not one of the most extreme, the last. He believed the material had been pushed to its absolute physical limit and that no sculptor could ever be asked to go further. Nearly 3 centuries have passed. No one has proven him wrong. Now look past the net, because the net is only half the story. The open Bible on the globe carries a specific Latin inscription. Translated, it reads, "I will break thy chain, the chain of darkness and long night of which thou art enslaved." The bas-relief below shows a healing, a man who could not see, suddenly given sight. These aren't decorative choices. They're a message. And the message was designed very deliberately by the man who commissioned the work. That man was Raimondo di Sangro, Prince of San Severo, the same person who commissioned the Veiled Christ. Di Sangro was the Grand Master of Neapolitan Freemasonry, a practicing alchemist, a nobleman whose reputation in Naples hovered somewhere between visionary and terrifying. He conducted experiments in underground chambers that produced lights and sounds no one could explain. He claimed he could reconstitute living crustaceans from their own ash. His chapel sat on land locals believed had once been a temple to Isis. He did not design this sculpture as decoration. He designed it as a document. The figure tangled in the net is his own father, Antonio di Sangro, a man who, after the death of Raimondo's mother, abandoned his infant son and spent decades wandering Europe in what the chapel's own plaque describes as a life enslaved to youthful passions. Antonio burned through money, relationships, and decades. Only in old age did he return to Naples, broken and repentant, and enter the priesthood. The angel freeing him from the net represents the combination of faith and intellect, pulling a man out of the wreckage of his own choices. Which means the most physically impossible sculpture ever carved is, at its core, a son forgiving his father. Not in words, not in a letter, in marble. Permanent and irreversible, the same way the abandonment had been. But Di Sangro layered the meaning, because he always did. Read the sculpture through a Catholic lens, and the interpretation is clear. A sinner, trapped in worldly temptation, is freed through scripture and divine grace. Antonio's redemption. A prodigal story told in stone. Read it through a Masonic one, and everything shifts. An open book is one of the 3 great lights of Freemasonry. The bas-relief of blindness cured mirrors the initiation ceremony, in which candidates enter blindfolded and remove the covering to receive what Masons call the light of truth. The flame on the angel's forehead, a symbol of human reason and intellect, is specifically Masonic iconography, not Catholic. Under this reading, the net isn't sin, the net is ignorance, and the sculpture isn't a memorial to a repentant father. It's a coded map of spiritual awakening, designed by a Grand Master who had been excommunicated by the Church and needed to find another language to transmit his ideas. The net means something completely different, depending on which key you use to read it. Di Sangro built that ambiguity deliberately. He always left a second door. Stand in front of Disengano long enough, and the net starts to feel less like a technical achievement and more like a test. It pulls every bit of your attention to the surface, the threads, the gaps, the impossible physics of stone pretending to be rope. And while you're staring at it, the message underneath goes unread. The Bible passage, the blind man, the father who left, the son who commissioned the forgiveness anyway. Keraulo spent years carving the most structurally fragile object in the history of sculpture. Di Sangro spent those same years deciding what it would mean. One man made something the eye refuses to believe. The other made sure that even if you believed the surface, you'd still miss the point. And maybe that's the whole idea. Maybe the net, the real net, isn't made of marble at all.